up the audience a little bit by looking at the Q&A that is being flashed out right now. There is a question on whether there are any digital models of value creation beyond education network plus platform and AI-enabled data platforms. Quite a mouthful there. Anybody would like to take it first while waiting for Dr. Justin to log in? I think it's quite late at night in the Pennsylvania state. Yeah. Arijit, would you like to take a...
Yeah, I'm just trying to find out the question. Where is it?
Yeah. Oh, it's in the Q&A.
Is today supply chain or education?
It's actually supply chain, but I'm just wondering. That's why I'm trying to figure out the question too.
All right.
Hi.
Okay.
Good morning, everyone.
Hey, morning.
Good morning.
Are we
Morning.
following the sequence of the questions being posed earlier on?
Yes, we are, but there's a Q&A being flashed out by the audience. While waiting for Dr. Justin to come in, I would like to urge the panelists to take a look at it first. And maybe use it as a warm-up set of questions. I guess this is like a prelude to the education track that is happening right next week. But I guess we can address the supply chain of education in this case.
Not a problem. If you can tell me the question, I can take it.
Okay, it's in the Q&A box, but let me post it in the chat.
Yeah. You don't see
Even I can't see the question.
I can't see
you can see.
I don't see any questions there though.
No.
Maybe there's a private question for you, Nasri.
Not really. It's in the Q&A.
Really, I can't see it.
Really, that's strange.
Yeah, even I can't. Okay, so now I can see because you posted it.
Yeah.
Are there any digital models of value chain beyond education network plus platform and AI-enabled data platforms? Well, there are a lot of digital model for education network. I don't know whether that's your question or not. But yeah, nowadays, education, if you're looking at the digital platform, there are multiple different education platforms who are providing education, not utilizing directly AI, but somehow without knowing that whether they're using AI or not, they are actually utilizing it. I would love to give example of one company based out of Spain. They are giving exact education on language, on 3 different languages. They are teaching mainly English, they're teaching Spanish, and they're teaching French. And this is basically a manual education that they usually give online basis. It is 100% digital platform. They are using one-to-many mode, wherein a faculty is actually giving such kind of training to people. But the fun factor is whenever they are giving training, it's being translated in an automated way. Now, if your question is like, for an example, is there any digital platform or not? Yes, I just gave you one example. Now, the fun factor is whether there is a AI utilizing inside it or not. Yes, it is. The way they are using it is directly translation service. So the people, the faculties who are actually teaching, when they are teaching in French, there is an automation way which their video language is being subtitled utilizing a methodology which is very common to convert their French into English. And then there is a digital, I would say, our avatar, or rather a character, a 2D character mainly, who is doing the same mimic, just like the teacher, to the students, who is doing the same translation and giving the same mimic to the people on French to English. So subtitle that is being done in a very easy way, but converting his French to English, that is being done in the backend. So if we look at the beyond part, I'm not sure what exactly you mean, but in all those education platforms, when they started, they never thought that they will be using AI, but now without understanding and knowing, they have started utilizing it. I'm not sure whether this is the kind of answer that you are looking for or not, because actually, the question is a little bit of...
Yeah, actually, Arjun, I seem to interpret the question slightly differently, right? I suspect the question is, in using education network, it has created value, or it has provided value creation, right? So the question is, are there digital models beyond the education network space? That means outside education, right?
Okay.
What are the available digital models? I think that's the way this question is being phrased. So you and me have different interpretation of the question.
I think the question is a bit vague, but if
Yeah.
the audience could clarify and paraphrase some of the question, that'd be great. Yeah.
Yeah.
So in any case, I think there's some technical issues involving Dr. Justin. So what we'll do is we're gonna head up straight to the panel discussion based on 3 sets of questions that we're gonna go through, and I'm gonna facilitate it via the use of a whiteboard for us to navigate the session, right? So if I may introduce quickly, this is the second episode of the series of AI education webinars. We have Oliver, who just spoken earlier. He is very well-rounded and very well knowledgeable in the areas of robotics and AI. And he's also the advisor for the Apara Association. Maybe, Oliver, you can introduce yourself very quickly to the audience, followed by Arijit, who is a serial entrepreneur, very much involved in AI and technologies in various aspects of the business world, from animation to education and many others, yeah, many supply chain and all that. And of course, we have Farah, the rose amongst the thorns, who's basically managing a licensed fund management firm out of KL. So perhaps before we start the session proper, Oliver, Arijit, and Farah, you could introduce yourself very quickly in the context of today's discussion on supply chain, while I flesh out the whiteboard discussion for us to capture the various perspectives and various opinions that you have on supply chain. Okay, thank you very much. Over to you, Oliver.
Sure. I guess my current interest lies in AI and robotics. And there are probably a number of organizations that I work with. But I guess not written in the resume is my association with supply chain. In fact, my early days was in the use of SAP, but not R3. I go back to the R2 days, where SAP used to be running on the green screen. We brought in the first SAP installation into Asia, Malaysian Telecom and Singapore Telecom. And we started to look at the whole logistics space and into supply chain. During my tenure with the Hewlett Packard organization, I actually implemented quite a number of supply chain solutions across Asia Pacific. So I do have that background. And of course, coupled with AI and robotics, it gives me a opportunity to understand how the two technologies integrate together. So I'm actually very happy, Nasri, to be able to share the experience and look at what's possible in terms of today's panel discussion.
Yes, indeed, Oliver. I'm so, and I'm sure the audience will be very keen to hear about your experience in the past to the current and the evolution of how supply chain gets empowered or boosted, if any, through the use of AI and RPA, you know. So that perspective can be mapped into these 3 sets of key areas that we want the panelists to extend their wisdom and experience to the audience. Over to you, Arijit. How about yourself? Why would this topic so be important to you in the context of your background, your expertise, and your experience in dealing with the supply chain across different sectors?
Thank you so much, Naji, for giving me a chance to speak in this distinguished panelists. Well, so my background actually goes with both different kind. One is into technology, one is into finance. In my earlier days of life, when we started Virtual Infocom as a company, in India, I have been through a lot of SMEs who are basically wanted to convert their business into technology with the help of technology, rather, I would say. So there used to be a lot of mining companies which I worked with personally, and which is of course not there in my details, wherein we created custom-made, tailor-made solution for them, which enables them to manage their inventory, their structure, their business flow. I think it was approximate 16 years back when I used to have a lot of hair in my head. So I really love to share all those perspectives, wherein these SMEs, they used to use, of course, SAP and a couple of other solutions. And there is another company based out of India, it's called Tally, who give the similar kind of solution. Not exactly like SAP, but for mainly the MSMEs and SMEs. But nowadays, these guys are looking for a sophisticated solution, which is mainly powered by machine learning and artificial intelligence, so that they can work smoothly. And those transitions are happening at the moment in India. And I have seen that these things are coming in Nepal, Sri Lanka, and Bhutan, as per my understanding goes, with talking with multiple number of business owners. So this is really interesting for me to probably share the perspective from the business point of view, and maybe enlighten my knowledge with other panel members as well.
Well said, Arijit. Over to you, Farah. A quick introduction about what you do and why would this topic be so relevant for the purpose of your work and portfolio and industries in general.
Thank you, Nazri. Morning, everybody. I am honored to be here amidst all the experts. I believe in the panel of attendees. Also, there's people from the factories, Kianju Can Factory, the Global Chambers, all people who are very well versed in the supply chain industry. So I'm here also to learn from all of you. Okay, I'm actually my experience with supply chain industry dates way back when I started my career. I had a little exposure working with Watsons, managing part of the back end. And also I managed to work at the construction company a little bit amount of time. And my recent one is in 2020, where there was a surge in trading of PPEs. A lot of venture capitalists were cashing in on the the values that is brought in by the trade of the PPE market. So I had a little exposure working there. So in Malaysia, I run Kanzin Ventures Management, which is a licensed fund management company for venture capital. And we are also still fundraising, and we would also be identifying companies or startups or SMEs that are in this line as well. So that is where we are focusing on. Thank you, Leslie.
Thank you very much, Farah, Arijit, and Oliver. So let's get the show going with three sets of areas or three sets of focus to address. Yeah. First question is, COVID pandemic has severely impacted the way the distribution of goods and services are being rendered and delivered to the end users. So in your professional opinion, which part of the supply chain is most impacted based on the industries and sectors you are exposed to, either directly or indirectly? What was being done? How is it being done now? What's the recovery process being sorted from then till now? Because of COVID, right? Whether you're from food, you're from manufacturing, you're from FMCG, you're from different sectors, right? Services even. So how would this be impacted most? In which part of the value chain is impacted most? And what is being done as part of the recovery measures? Perhaps, Oliver, you can state your observation in a specific example or use case that you came across directly or indirectly. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks, Nasri. Actually, the supply chain industry has gone through tremendous changes over the years, right? From how the whole work from the flow from the factory right down to the end customer used to be very manual, and over time gets transitioned into where we are today. Now, the pandemic certainly accelerated the transformation process for supply chain, whether it is in raw materials or finished goods. It disrupted a lot of the activities. What I see most, in fact, is that besides life sciences, right, where the impact is less, most of the other supply chain sectors face tremendous challenges. And these challenges will continue to go ahead with great changes over time. In fact, the demand will be there. There will be a huge expectation for greater supply chain visibility, understanding where the goods are flowing, what's happening, what are preventions of issues, and what are the precautions, efficiency, as well as resilience of the whole flow. What I'd like to zoom in on is the fact that the last mile delivery happens to be the one that's most watched. The last mile delivery is the one where the product or service meets the customer. And with rising expectation of the customer, we can certainly expect that there is huge need for the increase in service level, right? I guess if you look at around the world, the whole need to do delivery, and more importantly, we're seeing more and more organizations stepping up to provide the service. So with that in mind, what we're seeing is that the linear supply chain is going to move towards a much more integrated supplier model, right? Where partners are going to be coordinating with each others. So instead of the traditional stages where the factory of the production move from one stage to another stage, right up to the end of the end customer, organizations are looking at what are the better ways of delivering product. Now, besides the last mile delivery where it's going to be heavily affected and there's a huge transformation in that space itself, there is also the discussion around how it will affect the bullwhip effect, right? How it will impact the bullwhip effect. Now, we all know that the prediction of supply for the factory is important. The prediction of demand for the factory needs to be matched, and hence the supply chain flows smoothly. But if that is going to be affected, the whole challenge would be how would the factory be able to supply quickly enough to meet the demand. The fashion industry is one example, right? The food industry is another, where tremendously we are seeing a lot of need for real-time information. So if I would summarize out all the discussion, right? One, it will certainly move, right? The supply chain sector will certainly move from a linear model to a multi-node integrated model. Secondly, the last mile delivery will start to get tremendous visibility and notice because it will need a lot of attention. And finally, right, the whole prediction around supply and demand coming together will be greatly affected as well. So I believe those few areas will be areas where there can be tremendous discussion in how best we can actually address, and AI will play a very important role, right? I was just talking to some of the operators of last mile delivery. They are trying to pivot from a single point delivery to a multi pickup, multi destination center delivery. And that end-to-end optimization is going to receive a lot of attention, and the organization that can achieve that, right, will create a breakthrough in the delivery model. So over back to you.
Thank you, Oliver. Could you repeat the last point about how AI is being utilized moving forward for the supply chain? I thought that was a very important and poignant point that can be addressed and emphasized even more.
Yeah,
You mentioned about AI, right? Could you elaborate a little bit more on that so that will set the pace of AI in supply chain for the rest of us?
Sure. So today, most of the delivery are single point delivery. That means you pick up and you deliver, right? And that kind of planning and optimization is pretty much straightforward. But
and this is what you call linear, right? This is what you call a linear approach. Okay.
That's right. But what we're seeing is that there is because of the huge demand and expectation at the customer end, there's certainly going to be a need for multi pickup and multi-point delivery. So it's going to be end-to-end optimization. And that's where AI can perform a huge role. Meaning that if I've now got 10 parcels to deliver, right, and I've got 8 delivery persons, right, how do I match that up? Because it's going to possibly maybe 15 destination points, right? So that operational model is going to put the man thinking very hard, and more importantly, AI can play a part to speed up the whole process, ensuring the delivery is done in time and more importantly, efficiently.
I guess this relates pretty much to the food pandas and the Grab food, the deliveries, right? How do you think they would have managed it, and how could they have deployed AI to illustrate the non-linear approach? We are talking about the lateral approach, the simultaneous pickup and delivery points. So could we use an example for the food delivery points? How would this be applied?
Sure. Actually, it applies more than just to the food delivery because we are slowly seeing that with e-commerce in place, right? Delivery are taking place from the factory all the way to the end customer. Well, maybe jumping to the second point, displacing the middlemen, right?
Yeah.
But if we go specific into the last mile delivery organization, I would highlight UParcel as an example, right? UParcel,
okay.
yes, has struggled a lot in terms of how they achieve that. Particularly for you parcel, they deal a lot with pharmaceutical drugs product. So here you instead of going straight to the doctor to see the doctor and getting a medication, you actually could do a teleconsultation, and the drugs are delivered directly. Then of course, to optimize the whole delivery process, you could pick up from a couple of clinics and then you go to a few customers at the same time, right? And then you have a set of delivery resources that belongs to you and a number of contract resources. So AI is being used now to look at how we can optimize the route of these resources to deliver, right? And to also ensure that there are certain priority in the delivery process, there's certain urgency, as well as certain sensitive use of the product, especially the co-products where it needs to be delivered within X period. And some of this delivery requirements also include life-saving products, right? So with all these multiple parameters that needs to be considered, it's not just easy for a human being to sit there with a pen and paper to try to organize it out. So what UParcel has done is they have actually gone through a 18-month process to actually determine, based on past experience, right, how this delivery algorithm has been designed, and improve it based on feedback on how they have successfully delivered, and customer feedback on what are the dissatisfactory level. And with all this, built a system that's able to continue to do the matching, at the same time receive feedback to learn and relearn how the matching can take place. So there's a whole lot of data science involved here, and there's a whole lot of learning algorithms, machine learning, that reinforces the algorithm, and that reinforces the ability for the efficiency to be monitored, and to ensure that there's customer satisfaction at the end of the day.
Very good. So you brought in an important point called the reverse logistics that relates to the feedback and
Exactly.
and comments from the end user. So, and now you're putting another layer of artificial intelligence technology to capture the reverse logistics part
Exactly.
of it, rather than just the forward logistics. So I like the way it's moving forward, backward, and then simultaneous and a non-linear approach. So this is the kind of theme that Oliver is sharing with us. Very, very insightful. You can see if you to pick up his brain and illustrate what he just said, you can see how his brain basically translates into his knowledge and communication of how supply chain is most impacted from a manual to automation, from linear to non-linear, into real time. And he mentioned about the last mile delivery, as well as the prediction of supply and demand for factory needs to be matched because of the rising expectation of consumers, because of the complex needs, because of the high demand expectations for multi-point pickups and delivery. So these points that are illustrated and captured through Oliver's sharing highlights the importance of the supply chain aspects post-pandemic, and which areas are most impacted, and how some companies like UParcel are actually adjusting or evolving and addressing some of these points through telemedicine or teleconsultation, and then delivery of drugs along with the customer feedback and communication back to the manufacturer. So thank you so much, Oliver, for this. Very insightful, right, guys? When you look at the illustration that has been made from Oliver's sharing, I can't wait to hear from other perspectives and how we can add on to what Oliver has shared, and perhaps integrate or even agree to disagree on some of the points that we're going to debate on, right? So maybe move on to Arijit. Which part of supply chain, in your experience, have you've seen being most impacted, and how have these been evolved, and how have these been forcing the players to change the way they do things? Over to you, Arijit.
Thank you so much. I'll be probably taking one live example of one of my mentored company. As you know that I mentor a lot of organization. So one of the organization based out of India, their brand name is Vuthi. So what they have done, they are mainly into dress manufacturing, which is luxury brands. And they manufacture it for various different other brands. They usually white level it and then try to sell it through the store. But due to pandemic, all these stores are literally closed. Now, when you have closed store, how exactly they want to grab the market, how exactly they can give the experience. So what happened from the perspective of manufacturer, what they have done, they created an augmented reality based application, which is done by, of course, us, which enables any user to measure their body utilizing the camera, the mobile front camera, and then understand the body measurement. And according to the body, they suggest the kind of dress the user can probably experience with. Now, this is not happening in real time. The trial room became completely digital inside the augmented reality application. They try all the colors, all the shape, all the body fitness, and then after that they go for the order. So what happened during this pandemic in last I think 1.5 years, customers, I mean, they have a large amount of consumer base. They converted their experience zone into digital, and they started taking all these experience into a very simple AI-based, AI-enabled backend-based system, wherein the system can calculate their body, calculate their measurement, calculate their body color. Depending on that, if they're choosing any dress, that's fine. If not, it gives them a suggestion. This is the kind of dress probably you would love to wear. Once they select, once they choose, they give the order. And then, of course, in the backend, they are manufacturing it, send it back to the end consumer. Even there, they are using a sophisticated method of delivery mechanism. Because of pandemic, all of us knows that it is being affected like anything. So they created a complete mechanism which is pure transparent and probably more powerful than the other supply chain mechanism. Now user, they can actually track what happened after they give the order. For an example, if the order is being ready, how much it is done, what's the percentage of failure that they can expect according to the body measurement. Is it 99% correct or is it 98% correct? And according to that, they are getting their delivery into their home. And on the top of that, it is written that according to the body measurement, 98% is being calculated by our system. Probably you can alter a small portion over here if you want a perfect solution. So I've seen a amazing growth into these industries wherein they are utilizing AI into two different fronts. One is into supply chain. Second one, of course, is into the manufacturing process. Third one, how people are experiencing it, utilizing it without probably a knowledge that they are using technology in the backend.
Well said, Arijit. I like the specific example that you are sharing with us with regards to the dress manufacturing luxury brands. My quick question to you is, could this be replicated to the mass fashion brands rather than just for the rich and the famous and the higher income, upper middle? So do you think such things would be available for the layman or for the smaller enterprises? Because augmented reality, as you said, as a form of solution for this particular company, right, has been the pivoted model for them to reach out to the end users without going through the retail stores. Am I right? So they don't have to go to retail stores because of the pandemic, but it's a very interactive tool that you are saying being applied in the business model, where you get to use the technology to measure the body dimensions, the skin, the shape, and through the use of mobile phone, right?
Yep.
Okay, and then basically the machine or the system will be able to suggest or recommend the kind of fashion or dress that will be suitable for the customers, right? So basically you are converting the experience into a digital form for people to place an order, and yet there is also a sense of a form of reverse logistics where they are being updated and they can feedback, they can make some alterations to make themselves satisfied. And this is made possible, I believe, because of the targeted market that you are saying, right? Because they are luxury brands, i.e. luxury customers. So again, back to my earlier question, how would this be applied for those mom and pop shops or those retailers themselves who ironically have been affected by this and being disintermediated, as a result of this augmented reality? How would you advise to the mass retailers, mass operators or in the fashion industry or in the clothing industry?
Well, I believe that this is going to affect a lot of different players in the market. Now, when you talk about the luxury brands, of course, this is a little bit of higher on the pricing sector, but I'm sure in near future this can be utilized into a lot of other stores. For an example, it can be a small store. They can give the same amount of experience to their consumer. The only perspective is to use such kind of experience. They need a high-end server. Otherwise, direct implementation is a little bit of challenging. But
Mm-hmm.
yes, apart from that, technology is not that costly, which people cannot adapt. So I personally feel that in near future, we are actually working on the same. If we can make it available into a lot of SMEs instead of luxury brands only, maybe they can use normal addresses like the kind of shirt that I'm wearing. Maybe in near future, any small shop owner can give an same example, same experience to their possible single person without visiting their store. Probably they can give them the same amount of experience to their common person. And so when I'll give my example. When I go for probably a proper suit, maybe a three-piece one or maybe a two-piece one, I usually would love to go for a tailor-made. Now, these things probably will go on a very rapid change. Maybe during pandemic, a lot of us can't visit our tailors, wherein you can't do the custom-made one. But there is a huge opportunity. All these tailor, they know our basic body measurement. So as a system, if we do the reverse engineering, we get that data and then create the system in such a way it can actually hold and give approximate accurate data for the user into the system. And the tailor can get a little bit of different measurement utilizing AR. They can do the same similar magic which they are doing on the store itself. So from the perspective of small players, like maybe a small tailor, they can also utilize these kind of system for their growth of their business. And I agree with Dr. Oliver that these can be used with food and supply chain in a very rapid way. And I have seen two more mentees. One of them is based out of Australia. Another one is based out of Europe. They are using it. They already grabbed artificial intelligence based solution into their backend so that they can give the exact kind of smooth delivery mechanism for their food service.
Okay, thank you so much, Arijit. I think to summarize what he has shared with the fantastic examples, he said, in layman terms, as the technology or AR becomes more mature, it will become more affordable, right? As per any system life cycle, product technology life cycle. So it takes some early adopters like the client that you are coaching right now to move the tech life cycle into the masses. So for those of you who watch The Devil Wears Prada, right, it took me a while to understand the conversations between the intern, right, the assistant, and what's her name, Meryl Streep. So the lady, the girl was saying, questioning Meryl Streep, why is the walkway, the fashion walkway in Paris, why is such a big deal? It's so pretentious, it's so rara, it's so glitzy, it doesn't affect the common man or the woman on the street. So Mary Streep, in her own, magnificent acting capabilities, was saying, do you know all the cheap sweaters that you're wearing, all the fashion that you're wearing, all originate from the fashion walkways that you are despising. So the whole conversation talks about how the flow of ideas and the flow of trends get started from the trend makers, right, down to the masses. So in this regard, when Arijit was saying about how his client or his coachee, right, is pivoting using AR and selling high-end products to high-end customers, my question to him then was, how do you make sure that this is ultimately brought down to the masses, to the smaller players who are not selling to high-end income or high income earners, or luxury brands? How about the mass brands? So I think the long and short of it is that it takes some time for technology to become mature. And in this case of AR, I knew of AR since like 5 years ago when it's so clunky and so heavy and so expensive. now you can see it gets to become more affordable for certain things like properties and showrooms and all that, right? So I thank Arijit for his views on that. And I also see a question from Prof Muhyiddin, one of our dear partners from Selangor STDC. Can I get the panelists to come in and answer the question about how can AI be designed to predict zero defect on future market demand on certain products or services? So you talk about the manufacturing process, right? Maybe this question, Oliver, you can come in your HP days up till now. How do you make sure that the production, the processing part, right, could be supported by AI to detect any potential errors or defects in the production process, even as a use case? How can, I guess this relates to the QC part, right? You talk about quality control. How can AI be applied on QC that will subsequently address the zero defect goal that Prof Muhyiddin is referring to? Then anyone can feel free to answer, Arijit and Farah too. Yeah, thank you.
Sure. I think that's actually a very good question. But just before I address that question raised by the professor, I want to add on to some comments to what Arijit has just explained. Right. I think slowly and surely we are seeing the middleman facing that challenge of being able to survive. Right. So I know your second topic is around the removal of middleman. And
it's okay. We can skip. I mean, we can do lateral discussion.
Yeah. And with AR technology, actually you are kind of using technology to, I wouldn't say replace, but really to augment what the service level that can be provided. But having said that, I also want to take two levels up and say that if I look at the industry itself, there are probably three levels we need to be concerned with, right? First of all, there is the high value, high touch goods and services. Now, high value, high touch is where you really need a personal service. You're prepared to pay for that personal service. And this sector, this group of industry will continue to stay, regardless of what happens to the supply chain, regardless of how it proceeds on. If you want a personalized tailor, you still will go back to him, but you may use technology to bridge the communication process, but you still need a personalized service. But at the end of the continuum, where we're talking about low value, low touch, this is the industry that will be tremendously affected. And the middleman in this sector will be removed quite clearly, because with automation and with e-commerce, I really don't need to go and touch the pencil or pen that I want to use for my kids. But if I need a Mont Blanc, I will really want to see and see how it can fit my grip and the use of that pen, right? So in this instance of the low value, low touch, we will see the entire supply chain fairly automated, right from the factory level to the delivery, where e-commerce platform will take over most of the chores, right? The struggling group is the mid value, right? They struggle a lot because they do not know whether they should pivot to the low value and go for mass use, or should they move to the high end of high value, high touch. Now, this is where I go to the prof's question, Arvin. How do you ensure zero defect? So for the mid value category, they need to figure out how they can address the trends and the movements in the industry. So I relate an experience I have with the fashion group. Now, fashion is a very interesting sector, right? And Arijit mentioned slightly to that effect. But if I look at the fashion industry where we deal with the masses, right? I need to produce X number of certain sizes for certain seasons. And in 1 year, there are 4 seasons. Now, in the past, we talk about 4 seasons, but in fact, now we're going to even a monthly season, right? So which means your factory needs to produce every month to meet the supply, meet the demands of the expecting customer. And what you're basically doing here, you're really shortening the whole process, right? In terms of the design to production and then to reverse that out. So in order to do that, you really need to do tremendous study around trends, demographics, and more importantly, the feedback from customers that advice on the product design, advice on the usage. So all this feedback will have to reverse back into the design house. So it brings the design house very much closer to the delivery of the product itself. So your front end service level personnel who engages and interacts with the customer needs to provide that feedback to the design house. Now, today, most of the time, after the nice chat and the cash register rings, conversation ends there. There will be a need for the service personnel to document, to capture the essence of the discussion, the feedback of the customer, and send it back to the design house. So for zero defect to work, that loop will get shorter and shorter. And the real-time feedback from the customer complaints or inputs back to the design house, and they turn it around within the 1 month period, right, will be so critical. And human process, manual work is going to be very difficult to achieve that efficiency. And hence, automation will have to come in, AI will have to come in, right, in order to understand the different demographics of your customers, in order to understand the timing, the date, the trends of the population, and then modulate the expected design for the next group. So what we see the world moving is from mass production, which was a huge trend in the early days, to mass customization. And more importantly, I'm also seeing the trend whereby you want to empower your end consumer to be able to do some degree of configuration. And we're seeing that quite a lot already in consumer products, right? Where you can buy a product and you still have some degree of flexibility to adjust, to reset certain parameters to fit your needs. Let's take the mobile phone, for example, right? The size of your screen, the visual display is up to the user to define. I can make my font size bigger, smaller. I can change the different font size. So you create possible combinations for the end customer to adapt to his respective needs. And that's going to be the way to go forward. So there's not going to be standard products where you go to mass production and you expect everybody to buy, because some of that stock is going to stay in a warehouse and eventually nobody wants, because technology will catch up so fast, and the next version is going to come into play. So the design product must be able to capture the need, the tool for the end customer to actually configure to their needs. So the trick is going to be, for some products that can be viable, but for some products it cannot, right? So for digital products it's possible. For clothing, well, we can talk about reverse and customization of the clothing and some adjustments, yes. But for food, that can be a challenge. So then we have to look at the different sectors of the whole supply chain, right? Certain products can be done and certain cannot be able to achieve the mass customization. And once you're able to allow that to happen, the zero defect becomes a misnomer, because you are now supplying a product to the end consumer who is able to ensure that he gets what he needs. Now, quality assurance, honestly, today we are at a level where mostly we are close to perfection, right? Most of the time when the product comes out of the factory, it is in good shape. It is a question of whether you meet the customer expectation of the product that you have designed and delivered. And that's the part that's going to raise a lot of flags for manufacturers to take concern of, and to be able to enable the need to produce products that end customers can have a say in what some of the design factors that is to be included into the use of that product. So back to you, Nasri.
Well said, Oliver. I always enjoyed putting in place the try to structure and frame your point of view along with Arijit and later Farah. There is another question coming in. I'm seeing whether we can integrate this with the earlier question, yeah, to Arijit and yourselves, and again Farah for any views. I'm not sure whether you can see the Q&A right at this point. Can you see the Q&A in the
Yeah,
chat
we
box?
can.
You can, right? By Abdullah. A supply chain can be very complex, involving many layers of suppliers and vendors and interdependencies among them. How can AI help to ensure sustainability? I think bracket viability. As a business failure of one key vendor or supplier could have multiple rippling effect on the whole supply chain. So what he's saying is a failure of survivability of one provider of products or services can create a domino effect, financially, operationally, logistically, and all that. Okay, so the question is, how can AI or any form of technology help to ensure that this domino effect, this risk, is handled early or in a proactive manner? Okay, Arijit, any comments on this?
I think AI can play a vital role, not exactly in this layer, but rather before this layer, when the manufacturing started. So it's not going to happen only on supply chain. It's going to happen practically on the manufacturing side first. If you're looking for a perfect solution and if you're looking for optimizing your business failure, to be very, very honest, I'll give you a live example. Probably, as you know, I mentor a lot of SMEs and MSMEs, of course, startups. So when the manufacturer, I'll go back to one of the example where they actually manufacture teacups. This is basically a very sophisticated cups for people, and their target consumers are mainly the Europeans and US. So these guys are manufacturing out of Asia in 3 different countries, pretty large scale basis. Now, during pandemic, what they have done, this is really marvelous and amazing what they have done. They converted their entire manufacturing process utilizing extended reality glasses, wherein
Wow.
their workers, they used extended reality to do a perfect kind of solution for the manufacturing process, number one. Number two, they are trying, this is going to evolve very soon probably, these guys, these manufacturing units, now they are trying to optimize the sensitivity level of their labors. Example, whether they are exhausted, how much happy they are, their measurement of working procedure, whether within 8 hours, how much work they are doing. All these things are being measured utilizing a very simple application that they are using a smart device. Now, when we come back to the supply chain of it, after measuring human index, and then after that, when you go for a complete distribution of all those products, which falls under, of course, the logistics part of it, these optimization techniques are helping them to understand how fast and how accurate these levels are happening, and they can deliver it into a particular destination without hesitation. So all these factors which I was trying to explain in the back end that's happening, this is actually helping these manufacturing units to sustain, grow, and stay on the same line. And I would love to quote something. As a president of ELMA, which is our state's largest, you can say, a business chamber for electronic and manufacturing unit, as a president, I'm helping these manufacturing unit owners to go for complete automation. So if we look at India as a manufacturing hub, this revolution is happening in a lot of different places in India. And I can see a huge potential. Probably that will take a lot of time, but I can see a huge potential that these manufacturing units can actually automate their process so that there is a less number of error that can come into the entire process of manufacturing, and that's happening. And I can see if the question is whether we can have zero flaw or not, I'm not sure about zero flaw, but yes, we can have 90% to 99% accuracy. And when you have such kind of product being delivered to your end consumer, they are happy and their payment cycle is proper and structured, I don't see that the business will have, or rather see, any kind of failure in near future. Probably it's a gap between the manufacturing hub and a gap between the technology solution providing company. If they merge these things together, just like a partner, or probably go for a continuous solution, I think both of them will have a win-win situation, and we need that. We actually need technology companies to come forward and then give the solution in such a way. Probably the upgradation method will take maybe a couple of months, but the manufacturing units can actually sustain and grow together, and that's coming.
Thank you, Arajit, for your insightful share. For those audience who want to know more about such technologies, I'm trying to simplify the whole discussion by not delving too deep into the technical part of it to cause you confusion. But please contact Arajit and any of the panelists should you require any further clarification or in-depth understanding and information about the technologies that they're referring to. Okay, so thank you for that. Now, maybe anyone want to comment on Abdullah about the domino effect prevention? From perhaps not just from a technology, but maybe Farah can from an investment or financial point of view, and Oliver from the process point of view, linking up to what you said earlier about making sure that if the demand is understood clearly, then there should not be any failures, right, or mismatched in terms of requirements. But in the context of Abdul's question, how do you ensure that business failure could be avoided? So there's the business part of it, right? Business that links to financial. So maybe we let Farah comment a little bit. If you are the VC trying to invest or evaluate a particular company, how do you make sure that the company you're investing into do not have such risks? What do you look for when it comes to looking at a particular company as a form, from an investment point of view?
Thank you for the question, Abdullah and Nazri. I will try my best to answer this. I'm not exactly an expert at this, but I think AI will come up with insightful information, for us to make the best decision in terms of addressing the shortcomings of the system. So it is actually something that can help us to preempt any kind of risk that are foreseeable in the future. So in the sense of managing cost efficiencies and all that, and also the deployment at the downstream, this all can be helped by AI.
Very good point, yeah. Downstream versus upstream risk assessment. So you are saying that AI can be used to look at the data, right, of the
Exactly.
Players, whether you're a manufacturer or retailers.
Exactly.
And by using AI, you could do the 5 levels of analysis, right? What do you think a VC will look at in terms of the kind of information or the kind of risk that you are looking for?
Well, a VC will look at the whole thing from end to end, honestly speaking. But the VC will see how the company can actually give them higher returns, and how the company can give them higher returns is that they should manage their costs efficiently. And for an AI company to be in the SCM line, they would have to actually approach the CFO of the manufacturer and convince the CFO of the manufacturer that our AI system will help you to save the cost of running your factories, and then also help to optimize material flow, address stockpiling issues, optimize the end-to-end supply chain. And then also the AI can help to identify what is selling, what is the highest selling product, and to increase the output, to reduce the operations time, to reduce CAPEX and save payroll. In fact, before I came on this webinar, I was talking to a CEO of AI company in SEM, and they actually help one of their clients to save really more than 2 to 3x of their costs. So it is something that is very, very important for manufacturers to quickly adopt this AI solution if they're not yet. Because there's so many things that can help with the business. And in terms of other examples of how AI can help to actually be part of the supply chain management for the better is the final mile delivery with efficiency, and also demand forecasting, warehouse management, SCM strategy, and chatbots for marketing and operational procurement.
Sorry,
So
can you repeat that again? Warehouse management.
warehouse management and
Yeah.
supply chain management strategy.
Okay, and there are a
Marketing
few
and
more.
operational procurement as well.
Multiple and
Sorry?
procurement, is it? Yeah.
Procurement, yes.
Okay. So so it's interesting that from Farah's perspective, she emphasizes a lot on the efficiency and the productivity levels as a key risk, or at least as a key strength, whichever way you look at it, right? That sets the potential of a company that would lead to giving the investors higher returns by being efficient, by being productive, by making sure that they are able to identify ahead of the market, reducing capex, saves payroll, etc. So within the space, she mentioned about some drivers such as how they manage their warehouse operations, how they manage their supply chain across the value chain, and how they basically do the procurement process, right? Getting the
Yes.
goods, processing the goods, package the goods, delivery the goods, and all that. So very very focused answer. Really appreciate that. And for the benefit of all, Farah has just recovered from a little cold or flu, right? So
Yes.
appreciate that you can make it on time and make it safe and well for us.
Thank
You know, so thank you for your efforts in this. We really appreciate that.
Yeah.
Oliver, this domino effect factor, right? Supply chain most impacted, that leads to supply chain riskiest, what do you call it? Situation where it leads to business failure. Or because of one vendor. Could you relate to some experiences you have in the past to present, right, where indeed the failure of one could create a catapult or a domino effect across all? Maybe we could give some context on any experiences that you came across for this.
Sure, Nasri. I was waiting for you to ask me the question.
Okay.
What I probably didn't mention earlier is besides the SAP world that I was involved with, I did spend some time with Parametric Technology. And Parametric Technology looks at product data management or product lifecycle management, right? So in the whole process itself, when you have a fairly complex bill of material in your production process, and you depend on a lot of subcontractors to supply those semi-finished goods or raw materials to you, and you integrate everything together. So if one biggest link fails you, you definitely will not be able to meet the expectation of customer, and your whole call it ripple effect, whole chain of production process becomes affected. So the aspect of product data management is actually extremely important, because we now take a look at the entire QC of your product, not just at the tail end, but at each critical point of your production line. You need to ensure QC, and product data management actually ensures that the different criteria of testing, the different parameters used for defining the semi-finished goods or the subcontractor supply of the goods are appropriately tested at the different junctures. Now, I can go into a lot more depth around this whole product lifecycle management, and that could be a whole discussion itself. But just to give you a simple example, when we build vehicles, cars, when we build larger machines like the planes, or even the mobile phones that we have today, there are huge number of components, and probably Abdullah is referring to the, what if one of the little circuit component fail, and the whole product doesn't work, and the whole chain now is affected. And in that instance, where your bill of material goes into a multi-level category, you really need to have a proper product data management process and database to capture that. And AI actually will be able to be adopted to ensure that each of the linkages has certain weightages, and the calculated risk to move forward, right, is also reported. because there are some times whereby a component may not be up to 100% quality assured, but the calculated risk is less. You could still proceed with the whole production process because the defect at the end may not be as serious as other components where there's a higher weightage in terms of success rates, right? So those are the things that needs to be watched. And for businesses who wants to move into more complex product design and more complex integrated components, then they seriously have a look at how technology can be built into the process. PDM cannot be avoided in those instances, right? Typically, if you look at a product with a small number of bill of material, items in the bill of material, you really don't need a PDM, right? But when you have a more complex product, PDM and its whole quality assurance process must be enforced in that production line. Maybe that will help Abdullah in the discussion. And if there's anything specific that he wants to dive into, happy to have a separate discussion to exchange views and learn from each other's insights.
Thank you so much, Oliver. We have so many questions coming in, thanks to all the activities of the panelists and all that. While I see through the questions, perhaps I would like to throw a question to Farah to answer the point about what has been discussed earlier. If you can wrap up, what Oliver and Arijit has shared earlier to date, and then you put in your own views about the first question, right, about which part of the value chain is being disrupted, and the other two questions, if you're able to bring it up together. I understand that you need to share a video or something. Maybe Miza could allow you to share the video, and then I will gather all the questions from the audience and cluster them together and bring it across for the panelists to answer back. Over to you, Farah. Thank you.
Thank you, Nazri. So going back to the first question, which part of the SEM do I think it is impacted after COVID, right? So for me, I think upstream is positively impacted due to the surge in demand, especially in e-commerce and online groceries. And you also have to differentiate between established marketplaces and private transactions, which are less regulated or unregulated. In the sense of medical and healthcare suppliers, COVID-19 has tremendously positively impacted the business due to the high demand of medical PPE supplies and equipment. And key considerations are the availability of stocks and the geography of the buyer and sellers. For the private transactions, in the process of securing the transactions, the buyers have to source for legitimate sellers and vice versa. So the glove trading industry has been rife with fraud, unfortunately. There are some people posing as suppliers, collecting deposits and payments, and then they are gone. And then, so one issue that AI can help is to actually help to verify the authenticity of the sellers and the buyers. And AI can help this through the process of eKYC and AML. Some sites like Jumio and Comply Advanced also. So the parts where it can help is actually to verify buyers and sellers side. Okay, those who admit their allocation holders, and then also to verify the middlemen, the intermediaries, and verify the stock availability for ready stock, and verify the fulfillment for orders up to the specifications involved. So I just have a slide here because in terms of the international trade, we also follow the ICC documentations and procedures. So, okay, this was, all right, yes.
Are you able to share screen or share your video?
Yes. Can you see my screen now? So these are the Incoterms. There's XWorks, there's CIF, and there's also FOB. So these are also in line addressing the question by Mogul Diamond. XWork is where the supplier will actually have where the buyer will have to go and collect the stock at the factory. So they will have to send trucks. So that this one will result for them to actually gain more costs. It will they will have to spend more money to get the inventory, the stocks, go to the port. Okay, that's the XWork. And then there's a CIF. CIF, okay, the seller's obligation is until the port of destination. So that means the buyer don't have to go to the factory and get the stocks. So they might actually pay more upfront, but it's okay. It's actually ensured that it reaches to the port of destination. And then there's also the FOB. This is very popular. FOB is up to the port of loading. So all of this, it identifies the seller's obligations and the transfer of risk in supply chains management. So coming back to, sorry, there's another slide which I want to show you. Okay, can you see my Excel?
Not yet.
Oh, so sure. I just share
Yeah,
again.
you have to reshare.
Sorry. So in terms of the delivery, the last mile, you have to determine how many 40-foot containers do you need to actually go and collect the stocks. So it's like one like one 40-foot one 40-foot truck is actually 38,000 box for this particular product. Yeah. And then if they buy 1 million boxes, it will require them around 27 trucks. And that is a lot, but it's not as much as if they were to take like 2 million boxes. That is around 61 trucks. And the cost of managing the trucks are also quite a fair bit. If like one truck charges like 2,000, 3,000 like that, it will come out to quite a fair bit of amount to be paid. So where AI can actually solve this is actually to address the costing issues related to the SEM.
Costing. Okay.
Yes, to actually improve the costing efficiencies of a particular transaction. So okay, I think that's about it for now. Just a moment. Yeah.
So in order to improve the costing, you are suggesting that AI can be used um, to help in the pricing, right?
Yes, the
Because
pricing and
costing
improve
is
the cost
the
efficiencies. Yes,
yeah, because pricing is a function of the cost, right? So
yeah,
and here we lead to a margin improvement or
yes.
margin
And then
management, right?
also to identify the risk, the counterparty risk, who is taking up the risk and all that.
Okay, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Counterparty risk assessment cannot be excluded
Yes.
from this whole thing. And hence, you suggested earlier about verify the authenticity, the EKYC, and the AML of who you are dealing with on the other end of the spectrum, right?
Exactly, exactly. There was once just to share this experience. Okay, most of the glove factory in Malaysia, they are fully booked up to 2 years, 3 years, you know. So there's one transaction where we got a legitimate buyer, and then but there's also this lawyer who actually takes up more they actually have gone beyond their jurisdiction as being a lawyer. They have actually posed themselves as the seller's lawyer. I mean,
Oh,
yeah, as the seller's lawyer, where in fact they are intermediaries. So these are very, very important and pertinent things that we have to look at, whether they are actually intermediaries or they are actually the seller's lawyer. Yeah, and also the jurisdictions of the transfer of goods. You know, if the factory is in Malaysia and then the allocation holder is in Singapore, and then they want for us to make the payment in France, that doesn't work. It actually is a very risky thing. So we have to we can use AI to actually identify all these risks and help us to underwrite the transaction to help it to become a more successful and safer transaction.
very good. I like the way Farah shares from a financial investment and operational perspectives. In order to create a more improve processes and lead to better margin management strategy. Are there any other things to add, Farah, before I draw everybody's attention to the list of questions that have been put up? You're on mute. I can't hear you.
I just have a video to share, one or two
Okay.
videos.
Can you do that? Okay.
Yes,
We'll flash your video quickly.
just a moment.
There are more questions from Mike Dixon, Zuraimi, and a few others. Yeah. So if the host could post all the questions in the open category in
So
the
can you
open
see
format, that'd be
the
great.
slides now? Can you see the video?
Yes, we can. Farah, thank you.
So this is the warehouse lah. We use the robotics, and actually, I believe they also use AI.
This is very much on Oliver's alley. Oliver looks
Yeah.
familiar to you.
Sorry, Oliver. I think this is very, very interesting.
Yeah,
Yes.
this is
Yeah.
what his association does day in, day out.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is good. This is good, really. Different. I mean, there's always different versions of how the warehouse automation takes place. This is an interesting one where it integrates human effort with the machines, which still makes sense, right? There are, of course, fully automated warehouses that is almost lights out, as in, the factory, the warehouse works 24/7 without human beings, right? And the machines really don't need light per se. They just need the necessary infrared to sense where they're going and how far the distance are. So this is definitely a interesting approach.
Yeah. There's another one. Sorry. This one is by AWS, Amazon Prime. How they are actually ramping up. Can you see the AWS video?
Yes.
One-day shipping.
Earlier this year, Amazon doubled the speed of Prime shipping from 2 days to 1, and the faster speed is now available on more than 10 million products.
But cost-wise, is it very efficient? I mean, very affordable?
Brick and mortar guys, and B, enhanced Prime. Amazon has changed the game for me. So
Yeah, I think they have actually improved on the pricing as well.
To a consumer as flawlessly as they can and as quickly as they can. So Amazon is changing people's expectations, and they're perpetually improving those expectations. But behind every Amazon box, there are lots of people hustling and a lot of money spent to get it to you in just one day.
I think this is where AI plays a role to help the manufacturers to reduce their costs. Yeah.
Amazon spends
That's why Jeff Bezos is now the richest man in the world, right?
the last quarter of 2018, Amazon
And can take on Elon Musk.
reaching a record $9 billion.
So this is the margin management that you talk about, the through
Yep.
cost management. Okay, very good.
Yeah,
Can we move on to answering the questions by the audience, because these videos and whatever you shared, Farah, have very great relevance. Some questions appeared in the Q&A, some questions appeared in the chat box. So perhaps Oliver, Arijit, and Farah could look and pick up the questions and share verbally. We have the next 10-15 minutes because we started late. Probably in the next 15 minutes, we have to address all these questions. So we've answered about the zero defect somewhat, and we talk about how from Mogul Diamond, I like the name. Not only is a mogul, but he deals with diamonds, so he's a very rich man here. So there is a middle transportation issues for manufacturer, shipping, mainly sea freight, and end users. How can the delivery timing can be achieved by AI? Okay, and shipping cost is a daily challenge for manufacturers and timing of delivery. Can anybody comment on the shipping side of the delivery aspects for manufacturers? How can AI be used to optimize the transportation process through sea?
I think the AI can help the manufacturers to have a shipping optimization. It's like a AI optimization software for addressing the cost, shipping costs for the manufacturer. So
From a shipping cost point of view, how about from the logistical point of view? Because this will certainly affect the shipping cost, right? Like when you talk about Amazon can deliver in one day, at what cost, at what price? So here, I've seen some GLCs in Singapore, right? That basically tracks, the containers that's been floating around the ocean and all that. So they want to optimize the route, right? The journey by sea. They analyze the weather patterns. They analyze the traffic, the sea traffic. They analyze and try to match the demand and supply. So I think we have to research a bit on that. I actually physically, before COVID, met the GLC in Singapore. I think this one is actually ST, Oliver, ST Logistics, ST Group, right? They actually do a lot of all these things. When you go to their center, right, they have the whole screen to show all the freight movements, all the sea container movements, and of course they use it to detect pirates and all that. But certainly this could be used in that sense. It's very amazing. You have the huge screen, like those kind of Doctor Evil kind of globe on the ocean, and then you can see all the dots moving. You can see the route. It's like pretty much seeing the air flight, right? The routes of all the flights and airlines. But that's a bit macro on my side. I'm not sure whether Arijit and Oliver or Farah could value add to this part, because according to the participant here, the shipping costs, as what Farah was saying, right, is a very, very important aspect, right? When you start to deliver goods and all that, margin management, cost management. But in the context of delivery timing achieved by AI, how can this be done through any form of use cases that you come across? Oliver, over to you, or Arijit?
I can give it a start on this question first, and then let's see others. I think the shipping discussion is a little bit more than technical. We need to understand that because shipping involves not just the optimization of the route, it also involves geography, weather, sometimes also politics. So it's not so straightforward to do it. While we can optimize the route, if something happens along the way, the whole process is messed up. But I see that probably there is a need for consolidation in the shipping industry. There's a need for the bigger boys, like you mentioned, SD Logistics, to play a big brother role because they then have better bargaining power to negotiate how goods are being moved from one point to another point. The smaller players will struggle, and they will continue to struggle given all these dynamics. And at the end of the day, they will get squeezed in between. I like the days whereby you've got some money, you can buy a ship and you can organize the transportation. Nowadays, it's not that straightforward. So a lot of the smaller shippers have given up, merged with the bigger players. So I see that is happening. Now, once you have the necessary critical mass, right, you can do a lot more. Like what you say, you go to this operation room in SD Logistics, you can see all that happening. You look at some of the Japanese operators, right? They also have very powerful effect, and they monitor this with tremendous technology. So I guess to sum up, I see a consolidation taking place, a serious consolidation, and this shipping industry will transform itself very shortly. And given COVID, right, it will transform. But one point to note is that the shipping of raw materials is a great indicator on the economic situation. I used to do some programs for NYK Logistics, right? And when their ships are out in the sea, international waters, not moving, we know the economy is going to be affected soon. Right? So I get the early weather bells on how the economy will perform. So the shipping industry is a very interesting industry, and there will be consolidation. Back to you.
Thank you.
Totally.
Arijit, over to you.
Totally agree with Oliver, because I have seen, so I'm a director into one of my friends' company. They do large amount of exports from India to Russia. And I completely agree with Oliver. It actually doesn't depend on only technology. Technology can only enhance the process of the probably calculation, movements, but it depends on lot of various factors. When the ship is in the water, as you know, water is unpredictable, right? Nothing can actually predict the movement of water. We can probably predict the weather, we can forecast it, we can understand it. But when a vessel is on the top of water, it's really a lot of different variety of factors. Of course, international water, the calculation, politics, a lot of things. So when we talk about pricing of a product, it actually depends on all these kind of variety of procedure. As a layman, probably we don't understand why all of a sudden a product price has been increased, but it actually increased for so many factors. To optimize or subsidize all those things, it requires a lot of different variety. I completely agree with my co-panelist, and happy to hear his views. Yes, I agree. On the same time, I would love to probably take example of one of my experience working with Schlumberger, when they usually do the oil rigging worldwide. We are happy that we created a solution for them, for their people, to educate them what happens when they go under the sea, and then doing the stacking methods like vertical stacking and horizontal stacking. On that same part, they have a lot of variety and interesting AI solution which they are utilizing regarding all the entire process. Frankly speaking, in one such panel, which is a very interesting panel, it's not easy to explain all those industry verticals. Maybe we can jointly, as you know, that MyFinB is actually partner with WLS, and I'm happy and blessed that I'm part of it. We can probably take a deep dive into a particular industry level, where we can take all these questions and maybe give them the answer regarding the same. It's a huge industry. It's not that easy to answer within this short amount of time. Each and every case is an example. Yeah.
Absolutely. In fact, we are working also with Apara, and I'm sure we can work together for the furniture industry, for the retail industry, and textile and so on. So certainly, through education and through raising awareness of all the issues and industry verticals, right? I think we are getting there towards solving some of the greatest problems in the supply chain for those sectors. Now, I have a very good question from Mike Dixon. He has been a regular supporter and feature in some of our events. So he said that some recent media reports found that delivery drivers working for supply chain companies in South Korea were working so much until they collapse, right? A lot of health issues and all that because of, ironically, increased efficiency of a supply chain process. So delivery drivers, the one who had to transport the goods, right, working excessive hours because there are too many orders, too much efficiency in the supply chain. Ironically, the price of efficiency that we talked about. So Mike Dixon comes from the labor or human capital perspective on how to manage this aspect while trying to sustain the business, while trying to achieve the bottom line and top line. How do you manage the people side, the actual people who deliver the goods? So we've spoken about financial, we talk about investment, we talk about the technological part, we talk about the processes part, but now is the people part. Very important question by Mike Dixon. What do you guys think of this? Or Farah, ladies?
Yeah. Thank you for that question. It's very relevant. In fact, we actually heard one startup present on how they use AI to detect, to foresee, and also alert when there is actually potential mishap or potential accidents happening at the construction workplace. So there's actually using a wearable, and they actually, when the person actually falls or anything, they actually set off an alarm at the HQ, and the help will be sent over to them. Yeah, so it is something that already in the AI space, where AI can also be used to prevent accidents happening at the workplace.
Nasri, let me jump in here.
Please.
This is actually a very good question from Mike.
Yeah.
I had this discussion with you, Parcel, as well, around some of the challenges with their delivery resources. So Mike, you're absolutely right. Today, when we start to look at optimization, we put a lot of technology in place, and from the feedback that I got from the chief operating officer, and William was in our panel last week where he explained the situation. It is very easy for us to look at technological parameters and say, all right, you need to pick up this item, go to point A, point B, deliver them, and then finish it in X minutes or X hours, right? But a lot of times we forget the health of the driver, the resources. We forget certain items are easier to carry, certain items need more time to carry, right? And also the human body needs some rest at certain point in time. So one case that was raised in the panel that we had last week on this subject was the system was able to track, right, the drivers moving from point A to point B, point 3, and they realized between point 2 and point 3, this driver will always detour to a particular location, rest there, for like half an hour before he takes on again, right? And of course, from a discipline standpoint, this affects efficiency, and the driver was called up. It was only after that interview and discussion did they realize that he needs to take a break for lunch, right? And that's probably a nice location where he can have his decent food. And it's just so happened that because of religious reason, he needs to go to a particular location to find his lunch, because other places don't supply that. So somewhere the human factor engineering has not been built into AI solutions today.
Wow.
And that is a very important piece to look at. In any design of a technological solution, we are so mindful of how to optimize real time to the best efficiency, but we forgot the human element. And when we talk about human and technology coming together to operate, we must design system that looks into the needs of the human and not expect the human to work like the machine, right? So I mean, we all know that when you put an algorithm in place, it has no eyes, it has no ears, it just does what it's told to do, right? And it's important when we design those solutions, those are taken into consideration. So when you talk about the South Korean example, I fully agree. Somebody who designed the solution in Korea probably took in all the parameters that's needed for operational efficiency, for technology optimization, but they forgot the human factor. And that is something I strongly encourage organizations to look into. We must design technology to augment the human capability and not to challenge the human capability. But back to you, Nasri.
Well said. Well said. Good question. Good answers. Arijit, would love to hear your point of view about overworking the drivers who have to meet the increased demand due to technology efficiency. But I like to pick a word or phrase from Oliver that says that currently he does not see any human factor being significantly factored into the tech design solution when it comes to optimizing real time and information and all that. So perhaps Arijit, your point of view for this?
Yeah, frankly speaking, I firmly believe that technology is for us, for humans, to have a better life rather than trying to become more look like robots or probably like machines. And we are day in and day out forgetting when we design, it's called basically a software design when you are designing it. As you know, Nazi, as an angel, I look at various different business and I work with a lot of VC funds. We also get a number of startups who are actually trying to give a cool factor into their pitch deck that they are AI enabled. Okay. And when we go deep dive into that AI enabledness, we found a big gap. Coming back to the question, to all the audience, to all the participants, to all the panelists, and all of us humans, we really need to understand there is a big power which is here, not with a smartwatch or maybe a smartphone. The day we will realize that we need to rely more on human values, our designing factor for software, for whether it is AI or you are using an algorithm, whether the machine is learning by itself. I think as a software designer, as a system designer, you need to understand when you're using a factor like machine learning, you need to understand to give it a learning methodology, a very simple mechanism to understand a human mind, a human body needs a break. So while designing all these kind of software, I will go with Oliver. I'm not going to repeat his words, but I'll request all the software designers or architects to think of such kind of activities wherein maybe in the system, we can have an option for half an hour break for lunch, wherein the system will not encourage others to give order to the delivery person, that they really need to start their bike or car and then go to the destination. He can have his lunch in a particular location for 30 minutes. And that can be replaced by some other person in the same time within the same region, which cannot affect the delivery mechanism. So that thing is not very, very complicated to create, but implementation is still a challenge. So probably in near future, we will see applications which is properly AI enabled, not giving a cool factor just like a pitch deck. I'm sorry for this statement, but we get a lot of such kind of pitch deck which makes a statement. We have AI in the back end, and when we usually ask, it's interesting when we ask the question that where there is AI, please explain. There is no explanation. So kindly understand what is AI, and try to give that perspective and respect the actual mechanism. And probably we can do good things in near future with all of us working together. Oliver, Mirza, our good friend Farah, and a couple of others which I think missing in this panel. We can do a massive work together and help humanity to grow and prosper. Over to you, Nazi. Thank you.
Nasri,
go ahead.
Nasri, sorry, let me interject here, because I think we have come to a very interesting point.
Exactly.
Many times, and today, when somebody goes out and do a pitch deck, right, we flash words like machine learning, deep learning, right, and data science, and the fact that your algorithm is based on 10,000 data sets, 20,000 data sets. It has to be proven, right? But what many designers of solutions forget is that data set that you use, whether it is 10,000 or 500,000, can be biased. It may not have taken into a number of considerations. So it's very easy to draw on paper, all these lines and say, there you go, there's a gap, we can optimize it. There you go, there's another, inefficiency, let's optimize it. But the human factor is not considered. So I would advise, startups or AI solution developers, when they build the solutions and when you optimize, do not only rely on data. Data usually can be biased, and most of the time it's proven to be biased. You really need another qualification process to understand if additional elements need to be considered, right? So the machine learning is not foolproof, and certainly needs to take into consideration the potential biasness and the impact of the biasness on the resultant solution. Back to you.
Very well said, guys, and Farah. So we've come to the end of the session, but I'm so thrilled and so impressed with the kind of flurry of questions that came in and the kind of answers, quality answers that are given by the panelists. So I have to apologize that we have to end it short. However, for those of you who need a copy of the whiteboard discussions that have been captured through the distinguished panelists, right? We only give to those who requested from us and those who attended. So please write in and request for a copy of this. But you know what? To summarize, sum up the whole exciting discussion that took place today, right? Which kind of exceeded because we kind of started late in the absence of some technical issues faced by our keynote speaker. But there are three things we gained out of this, right? We identified what are the parts of the supply chain that are most impacted from the three panelists' perspective. So, and then we also talked about how AI can remove the middleman, Oliver spoke about the three different situations that middlemen are faced with: high value, high touch, mid value, and low value, low touch. So this can be expanded further, like Arijit say, it's impossible to cover in a single session, and it depends on which verticals we are talking about, right? And then this is something exciting because Mike Dixon's question has raised quite a lot of important points about the people factor that would not have been covered by the seminar, right? Had it not been brought up by him. And because he is also going to be producing an AI system in the next 3 months with us, in the certification in applied AI, right? Why not, Dixon, Mike, you produce this AI system with us to do a prototype on labor schedule optimization in a logistical or supply chain setting. And you have all these panelists coming in to advise and to guide and to give perspectives on the system and working together. So if you can work on 3.19, okay, the workforce labor schedule optimization, I'm not forcing you, but it's an idea that you brought up, right? There's a real pinpoint, and all the panelists say agree that there's a missing link, there's a missing factor in all this digital transformation. So 319 could be your CAI project, to develop a prototype by January 2022. You have it displayed and actively executed as part of a prototype, because it fits on a lot of data and a lot of information like what Oliver says. And the question here is, we have faculty advisors like that to validate and to question the authenticity and the bias level that could arise as a result of analyzing those data. So thank you so much, Mike, on this one. So the third section talks about AI that is seen to be most impactful, and which areas that seem to create the most value. Okay, so suddenly we have like 9 use cases of which AI can be developed, can be designed, can be deployed. Right? So you're talking about personalizing the orders, right? Based on customer transactions, data, and demand. So you can create a robo advisor on how to predict market insights and market preferences for certain product. So you can use AI for QC purposes, AI to predict business failures, AI to manage the communication and predict the kind of complaints and the kind of returns inwards due to, from the reverse logistics angle. So AI can also be used to conduct non-linear approach simultaneous analysis across the value chain, not just in a sequential way, not just in a linear way, but simultaneously picking up data, readiness, evaluation, market demand, supply, and so on. So 315 it's across the value chain. Then AI can also be used for PLC, right? Product life cycle management process, which Oliver was mentioning about a critical part of getting the orders right, getting the demand right. Farah talked about AI for optimizing costs, optimizing pricing. There are ready solutions, AI ready solutions for this in our center, but certainly it need to be modularized for each sector and for each part of the value chain. AI can also be used for as a form of indicator of economy, by looking at the raw information, the raw shipping information. Oliver was mentioning, if there are too many ships in the dock, right, then it's a sign that things are not moving well in that country. And of course 319, thanks to Mike Dixon, this is an idea that he can work on, or anybody can work with him on how to optimize the labor scheduling, the delivery drivers, how to make sure the demand and supply, not just the goods, but the demand and supply from the driver's point of view. How do you actually ensure there's sufficient break? How do you ensure that the scheduling is, takes into account the welfare and the well-being of the drivers? Okay, so we have 9 use cases, guys. At the end of the day, we have 9 use cases that can AI automation can be deployed as part of the certification, as part of the industry adoption or partnership. So I encourage all of you to get in touch with Arujit, Oliver, Farah directly for any kind of such ideas. And we at the Center for AI Innovation will be happy to support. So with that, thank you so much, everyone. Maybe just for the sake of closing this with a bang, any 3 of you perhaps can give a one-liner to end the session, right? One final parting phrase and or statement, how this topic on supply chain means to you and means to people, society, and industries. Who wants to start first?
I think Oliver or Farah should start.
Sure. Let's not push. I'll go ahead. I think in the whole process of looking at automation and putting AI into a supply chain, the human factor is a very important piece, because it is not like just purely a factory where strictly you can just automate everything and have a lights up operation. So my parting word would be in introducing AI into the supply chain, please consider the human factor.
Thank you, Oliver. Farah, how about you?
I think AI in the supply chain is very, very important in terms of avoiding wastages, to optimize the output, and to help to mitigate risks, to avoid fraudulent activities and ensure compliance.
Thank you so much.
So I'll be giving a very small request to all of us, all the humans. Probably while developing solution, we are forgetting that we are humans, and we are probably pushing ourselves into a limit, and thinking that probably we can compete with the machines. Well, we don't need to compete with the machines. Rather, machines need to work for us, rather than we are becoming day in and day out as machines. I'll shift a little bit. Probably we are forgetting the future. which is coming up. We are forgetting our future generation. And we are thinking that the way we are moving, they will be probably getting a lot of input from the system, from the data that is being there floated in the internet, whether it's open web or darknet or probably the deep web. Well, today's kids, they are actually smart. We feel that they are smart, but are they really smart? Are they becoming more smart, or they are more and more day in and day out becoming dependent on the system? You reduce the internet from our device and you ask anyone who is a future generation to find out the way, go back home without using a map, which is a Google map. Can they do that? Can you see that whether they can fire without system and utilizing any kind of system or machines? Can they grow crops? Can they go for the basics, which is human needs? Well, we as a human, we need to understand that we are human, not machines, not systems. We need to build a mechanism which is smooth, faster, and smoother for betterment of humanity, rather than pushing them to a limit that a person will work for 16 hours in a day without a rest and break. That's not the growth that we are looking at. So probably I will ask all the system engineers and developers and creators to be mad, crazy, but thinking in a mind that mad is actually, again, with my quote, moderate, accurate, and determined. So don't make humanities a crazy humanity, rather make them determined in such a way so that we can build a better world and we can build it together.
Thank you so much, Arijit. See, Mike Dixon, see what you have caused. You have caused a debate on human versus technology in the context of supply chain, and call for humanity to be more compassionate, especially the technologies like us, right? As a self-reminder to take human factors into consideration when it comes to launching and implementing solutions like this. Excellent, guys. And Farah, I consider you as one of the guys, Farah. So that's why it's not about sexist thing, but we welcome all comments. We welcome you to interact with the panelists. We will let the video on in the next 5 minutes to finish off whatever you need to finish off in terms of Q&A. But let's release the busy people off. Thank you, Farah. Thank you, Arijit, and thank you, Oliver, for this excellent moderation. And certainly thank you to the audience for making full use of the 90 minutes or more to delve deeper into the supply chain. It's not enough, I know, but let's document this conversation. Let's take it further into future programs to come. So thank you so much, everyone. Take care.
Thank you, Nazri. Thank
Bye.
you. Hello, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.